This is a subject that myself and all of our staff are very excited about. This is probably the most favorite part of my job. It's most recreational and fun related and people having a good time. Not everything in the job's that way, so this is the good part of the job. What we're here to talk to you about is ECTC, the Elmira-Chemung Transportation Council, is funding this study. ECTC is an MPO, a metropolitan planning organization. We're hosted by Chemung County, and we sit in the Chemung County Planning Department. We also have here is our director, Kevin Mindell, up front sitting, and Liv Lovejoy. She is a transportation planner on our staff as well. Andy Avery's here. He's the chair of our planning committee. And I think that covers all the officials that are involved with our group. But we're here to talk to you about this study to connect the Lackawanna Rail Trail to the Catharine Valley Trail. There's lots of details that I get excited about. I'd like to share with you, but I'll let it go in order. One of the things I did want to tell you about is we have a group called Backpack. That's Bicycle Advisory Committee and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And that's where we bring anyone who's interested from the public, support organizations in to talk about things such as this, because one of the things the ECTC does is we look for alternate modes of transportation to get you out of your car, to get you out of a bus. Bus is alternate transportation, but we like to get people to walk or bike somewhere if it's a short distance. So things like this give you opportunities to get to those places. So you see in the like the Catharine Valley Trail and the Lackawanna Rail Trail are projects that have been successful that we have put funding towards bringing to fruition. I'll leave it at that and let Carl go ahead and do his demonstration or presentation for you.
Hi, I'm Carl Schlesinger. I work at Fagan Engineers. We're working with the ECTC on this project. I'm also a big bicyclist and hiker. I've used both these trails extensively, hiking with my dog or running or biking. I'm also part of the Elmira Community Cycles, who is kind of in the process right now of combining with the Southern Tier Bicycle League. So providing bikes for people and repairs and rides. So this is definitely something that I want to see happen and see done well. So the purpose of this study, so we're kind of in the early stages of this in development, we're looking at trail alternatives, kind of looking at the big picture, and we're going to identify issues in different areas. We have wetlands, property owners, other things like that, potentially steep slopes, or develop cost estimates and a report that then ECTC can use to look for funding to actually start the actual detailed design. We're not doing a right down to the ground exactly this is where the trail is. We're looking at trying to pick an alternative and pick the best route to do this. And then the next step would be that final design to then go to construction. So some of the challenges we have to consider are wetlands. A lot of this area has part of it's the old Chemung Canal and Railroad, and so there's a stream running right through it. The other alternatives have Newtown Creek near them. We have historical and cultural resources. It's obviously the canal path, so that has historical impacts. Accessibility, we want to make sure, one, that it's accessible to use, but two, we can get to the trail, once again, property owners, and then so land agreements. So the purpose of this and the whole idea is we have the Lackawanna Trail on this side that goes from Lauman to Eldridge Park, and then we have the Catharine Valley Trail and Watkins that goes to, this is Mark Twain Golf Course and the domes, and to connect that middle section. So we have this nice long, potentially like 28-mile range trail that links our two communities. So this, and the way this is kind of set up is we've got kind of a zoomed in picture. I've got larger maps of the whole thing in the back there that we can look at later. Got a section of the trail, and then we've got a few pictures of what we've done with walking the trail. So from Eldridge Park, you can cross through here over to Lake Road. Chemung County is already talking about paving this section to get you to the baseball fields and next to the Ukrainian church. So we would be continuing on. The alternative A and B are following Chemung County owns that old canal path. And then the third alternative would be going back here and kind of following Newtown Creek. So this is looking south. This is where the county trail basically ends. This is what they're looking at paving in the near future. So this would be kind of our starting point. And you can see areas of the trail, the neighbors have encroached on it. So, this area is actually in part of, they're in the county boundary. So there's definitely going to be some issues like that, potentially privacy fences and some other things and then choosing which side of the creek, because right through here is the stream that we're on. So this is the next section. So this is kind of a dense section through the heights and through this area. This is Camden Ave. We go through a lot of the backyards through here, and then the fairgrounds, which this could be a nice potential place for maybe a parking spot and access to the trail. And then the other one obviously is following Newtown Creek, which is kind of through here. Obviously, there's a lot more private landowners in that section. I think there's 15 or so. So this is right down the road on 14th Street. This is that Villa Serena Apartments is here. You can see the stream is very wide and active. This is just a little further up the road. You can see that people are mowing it and using it. This is getting across, I think, to Lexington Ave from the neighborhood behind it. Just another picture. So I think this is coming into the Camden Ave area. So
Is that really a stream or is that the canal?
I think it's the canal, but I'm calling it a stream just for definition.
So on the New York State DEC maps, it comes up as a Class C stream. That's why we use.
Well, they like to call everything a stream.
Yeah. Yep.
Here is a section. We had some of our interns this summer walking it last week, where people are obviously using part of the trail. So this is the next section. So the fairgrounds was kind of right here. The trail gets pretty thin and it's really pretty overgrown through this area, but we'd be coming out at the interstate and then potentially going this way along the sidewalk or in the edge of the road. And then Chemung County is also working on doing a bike-friendly corridor on Grand Central. So we would have the infrastructure there for a bike lane and stuff, and then going into this Brickyard Park and then following and up this way. And these are some other alternatives up by the stream. So
Up that, why is that Lake Road?
this is not Lake Road. This is Lake.
That's Lake Road, okay.
So this piece of property here is owned by the village. The other pieces of property are privately owned. And then up here, this property here is privately owned. So this is looking south from the interstate at that section. You can see it's very overgrown and there's definitely some wet areas in there. This is under Grand Central. You can see that even if we had to do something up in here, there's a lot of room. But I think part of the county plan is to kind of dedicate a lane through here for bikes and pedestrians.
Mhm.
This is the Brickyard Park, which is a nice little park that I've never been to until I started doing this because I don't live in Horsens. And then this is looking at the trail corridor as it is, and it's very filled in, which can be a good thing because it means that we'll have some buffers to the neighbors. This is that piece of property the village owns, which could also potentially be another. I haven't talked to the village yet, but you know. And that's along the back of this. So kind of right here and in the woods is where the old path was. And then this is a little section owned by NYSEG that comes out by that restaurant in Bon Julie's and right in that area. That's kind of the picture from here. So that trail corridor, which is privately owned, is right in kind of those woods. So now we're getting into the meat of the village of Horseheads and Hanover Square, and so there's a lot of density of houses and stuff and properties, so we've got some work to do to figure out paths here, and that's kind of why we're here, is to get people's input. And then we did not walk this section because it's all active railroad. In the past, it was put together as a plan by to do a trail next to it, which would potentially have to be a raised, like platform. So we're looking at potentially maybe going along the holding point or following some other route, but
Well, I don't know if you can see it in this particular photo, but going up, which is actually east, is the trolley bed, which is a little raised, but it, as you say, it would need to be raised some more.
yeah. And then this is kind of closer to the Hanover Square where the path is that's overgrown, and a lot of this has backyards of businesses and stuff right up against it. And then this is kind of the other end of that line. So this is the Dandy and Wygant Road. And this is the final section to the domes. And here's Soaring Eagles Golf Course. And so we'd be following the old trolley line through there. And our guys tried to walk it, but it was pretty unwalkable.
Good luck with that.
Kind of made them through interns.
And then I just got a couple examples after this. So just another picture of the wetlands of, potentially in these wetland areas, we might have to get into some of these things. We can do a small amount of wetland disturbance. But above that, you'd have to build above it. And that would obviously be more costly than just doing an on-ground trail. Fine. So Liv Lovejoy is going to lead us through the Q&A. I'm happy to support you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna ask the audience here. So firstly, I'd just like to ask, from where you live currently, how connected do you feel to recreational opportunities? Anybody?
Well, I think I brought you a little bit of a letter about some of my concerns. I live in Horseheads, essentially up by the Horseheads Middle School. And currently, if I want to access let's say the Catharine Valley Trail to my house, it's get on Route 14, which is terrible, even though that's considered by New York State to be a bicycle corridor. I don't consider it as such. To get down to the Lackawanna Trail, I ride through Horseheads and come down Lake Road to the entrance that takes me over to Eldridge Park. That is not terrible. It could be better with the addition of a designated bike lane on Lake Road, which could be a possibility in the future. As a matter of fact, I would suggest it anyways. No matter what happens here, I would suggest a bike lane on Lake Road. So I like what's being proposed here, utilizing existing rail trail as much as possible. So there's.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to share their access to recreational opportunities?
Yeah, I live downtown Elmira, and Main Street going north, and then oh shoot, I always forget the name of it. It's one way, and then the road next to that is one way south, and they're very low traffic roads, perfectly safe for bicycling, and they dump you right into Eldridge Park on the north side. That collects, probably a quarter of the city of Elmira with safe cycling.
Awesome. Back there.
I was just gonna comment, so I'm also one of those heads. But I'm on the road off of Ladder Road.
So to get to any type of recreational opportunity, I have to put something in my car and go somewhere. And I come in, that Chemung County is the worst place to ride your bike. Just saying, it's very dangerous, and I just saw on your map, you put a little map. Just a heads up, your loop around where the highway is, and when you're turning by that property, by the county. And if that's where the trail goes, you have to be very careful, because the high schoolers yank out of that high school parking lot. They do not look. They look one way and they turn to go. My son got hit there on his bike, while he was in the hospital. So just hold that up.
Thank you. Yeah.
That crossover by Wings is also a nightmare.
Thank you. Anyone else before we move on?
Yeah, I got to talk about that.
Sure.
Active. Idea is, obviously, we have the depth that was crossing between Eldridge and over to the extension trail. I would like to maybe see that addressed, if not just talked about, or planning for futures, with the scope. Because on Catharine Valley Trail, it's really nice. You have this elevated platform up the trail. You don't have to cross back over 14. That would always be great. I'm not sure what the regulations behind that would be, how much that would cost, where funding would come from, but it's always pie in the sky kind of idea there. As far as active on the actual road, so I live in the Elmira Heights right over here on Linwood, this side. And, going down Linwood 5, cross over some side streets, Prescott, down McCann. But then getting into Eldridge, there's always the question of, do I really want to go to Eldridge? Because then I have to cross back over Clemens Center, or do I want to keep going straight and kind of meander through the extension of Clemens Center and to where that's fine, but yet again, crossing from Eldridge, which is the epicenter of like where people would want to start or end the ride, into the trail is always a question. Along with talk about Lake Road putting in a actual bike lane path, that's great, but there's two things that always frustrate me is the washout from the commercial trucking companies on both Lake Road across from the dump and on Grand Central. And I always wonder if that's even they should be allowed to do that. Should they be, talked to about that? It's just horrible. Not only for the bikers, but for cars. It's washed out gravel everywhere, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, hey, well, when we do this, can we kind of address some of the underlying issues that we're currently having?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right. So if we were to build this connection, would you use it? And if yes, why? If no, is there anything that would make you more or less likely to do so? Anyone?
I think if those two trails were connected together, it would be huge for trail use. Because currently, they don't really go anywhere. Like just 2 weeks ago, I was on the Catharine Valley Trail and I stopped to talk to two couples that were standing around. And they came down from Toronto and they were riding that trail from Watkins towards Elmira. And they asked me, where does it end? Where do you turn around? And I was like, well, it really doesn't go anywhere. Turn around wherever you like. But, and I also work with a bike tour company, and rail trail trips are far and away the most popular trail uses or trips. And I have a bicycle store in Elmira, and rail trail riders are the largest portion of riders out there now. Like road riding is kind of not as nearly as popular as it used to be because people are worried about cars. Mountain biking is a little tough, you have to have access and skills and desire, but rail trail use is huge. And so if you had a trail from Watkins to Elmira or, continue down the line, but Watkins to Elmira would be great because it would be like a tourist trail. People would, they'd have a reason to ride to Elmira. So stay overnight, spend some money.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was gonna add this information before, but the section of trail we're looking at would be between 7.5 to 8.5 miles. To link those two trails together.
Total would be.
Well, I measured a few times. It's like, last time I measured was 29.2 miles. So we say approximately 30, not quite 30, but one of the things to interject, I didn't want to say now, but I got a daughter who was a marathon runner and bicyclist, who's been on the trail in Kingsbury, shot many times. She bought her bikes from Kingsbury. She's ran the Pittsburgh Marathon, and I said, what do you think about coming back here? Have a marathon in this area, because that draws a lot of people, a lot of economic opportunity. But if we had a 30-mile trail, there's a lot of logistics you gotta go through, but it's doable.
There's been some runs held on the Catharine Valley Trail,
They won this year.
and yeah, it's gonna be another one, and I wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to go further. They're that kind of runner.
Actually, my son was on the Corning cross-country team. They trained on the Catharine Valley Trail.
I'd like to just build on some of the things that Paul said. And there's an opportunity that's missed by just not connecting these two trails. It's just there for the creation. And once it's created, it's going to open up all kinds of opportunities, both for the people who live here, but also for folks who visit. This area has great riding. Agree that you have to be careful, totally get that, okay? However, once you get to Watkins, you can get out and do other things from there, and it could become a destination place like Pine Creek Trail is, or sections of the Erie Canal and some of the loops that are up near Rochester. All that's there for us if we create this.
Thank you.
I would also say that it's not, bikers aren't allowed on it, but the Finger Lakes Trail goes right through Watkins too, so it would be a link to the Finger Lakes Trail.
Is there anyone who's kind of on the line who could be convinced if there was maybe something more or something less? Anybody?
Not of that nature, but just when you're talking about using the trail. So I live right in the village of Horseheads. I'm town of Horseheads historian. And so if that trail went right that close to my house, it'd be far more likely, because right now I have to, throw the bike in a car and drive up to somewhere, one way or the other to use the trails. So that just, it would increase the usage. I'm sure a lot of the people in the village would start using it. But also, if you are able to keep that right along the old Chemung Canal pathway, there's huge opportunities that we would love to get involved with, trying to put up some historical markers and things like that. And we've talked for a long time, this would be a perfect opportunity to start working on a Chemung Canal corridor that goes all the way from Elmira to Watkins, to get all those communities involved and all linked together.
Yeah, I'm glad
So
you
this would
mentioned
be a
that.
great thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the story part of it. There's a lot there that, can be expanded on.
Just a little question. I think at one time, the Lackawanna Trail was considering going further south from basically Wells, I get this right, Wellsburg, down towards Sayre. Is that still something that's being considered?
I looked at that with the past, Kevin's been the director for 2.5 years, something like that. The previous directors, Jim Airy was the director of I should stand up. Jim Airy was the director of ECTC back in the day, and Jim, I give a lot of credit to why we have the Lackawanna Rail Trail. Andy Avery took me for a bicycle ride many years ago on what is the Lackawanna Rail Trail. We joke how it was like going to Vietnam, carrying our bicycles up over fallen trees, and we were all cut up. All the what, but it was a beautiful trail area, and Jim talked to us about people using the trail and said, there's a great potential there. Well, when we met with DOT at the time, they said, well, we want to use that for a utility corridor. And he said, well, how often are you going to be out there as a utility corridor? Once, twice a year. So why can't we use it for a trail the other 363 days a year? So Jim really took it all the way to get that trail to fruition. But to answer your question, when we did look at that, we looked at from right there down where they converted 17 to 86, but there's some major drainage issues there that we'd have to address, because that would be a beautiful section, because there's a lot of eagles in that area, people for bird watching and stuff. So our goal back then was walk-ins to Waverly. We always, planners, you always come up with catchy things. But now it's Longman to the lake. But, so yes, we did look at that. And it's not out of the picture. It's just, what's the low hanging fruit that we can grasp and expand right now?
So say at this point, they'll stay away from the roads and try to keep it just a path that's mainly for bikers and runners, or?
As much as we can, we'd like to keep it off of the road, so it's more exclusive for walking, biking, bird watching.
Oh, I mean, I think doing that about 10 years ago. There were way too many distracted people on the roads, and it unsafe. And as you get older, you get a little bit more fragile. You go down, you might not get up. I think anything that you can do to keep it away from traffic is really helpful.
Thank you.
I think going down into where all of the military keeps coming through, that would be something that'd be really neat if we could do it, and having pictures about as they were taking off, if we could keep it from being spray painted and distracted and everything. That would be very neat to be as they were going through on the road itself, and just look at this as it was going on.
Thank you.
One other thing too, kind of expanding on the, how connected you do feel and the desire to ride trails and stuff like that. A lot of folks I talk to are retired folks, and they just don't want to ride on the road anymore. And when they relocate, they'll almost always say they look for a place with close access to a trail. So I remember way back when rail trails were sort of starting out, everybody was worried that it was going to be like a highway for, you know, hooligans on dirt with bikes and stuff like that. But the truth is, it's, you know, nice people, not bothering anybody. And so it kind of raised property values right near trails. So that's another selling point there.
Definitely. Thank you. Is there anyone over here?
As I wanted to touch on safety concerns, some of the both trails are in some remote areas. Is it safe to walk by yourself?
We'd like to think so. And hopefully, I mean, Mike,
Bear on one, that would be
I would,
I feel it's safe. I mean, particularly with Lackawanna Rail, there are so many people on that trail that you're sort of there's so many people there, and you feel like, okay, yeah, I know that I can see a biker ahead of me. I can see a crowd behind me. So I'm on them. My husband doesn't worry about me. Maybe, I don't know, but I think they're safe.
Lighting would be great. Although that's like solar light, that's like money, but that's the only concern I would think would have towards dusk, especially in the fall.
We didn't see it.
yeah, I think, you know, with lighting and the more usage, the better. You have more eyes out there. We talked about fencing for property owners, but if we're really concerned about wildlife, that probably is something that we could look into as well. I definitely agree with the lighting though. Yeah. Yes.
One part of the trail that talked about coming out from Bon Julie's and the restaurant, that's gonna be so the trail will cross over South Main Street.
Right now, we're just in very early stages, but I agree that that is a horrible place to cross.
And a
On a
bad
curve
road
of-
for
it's-
pedestrians as it
Right.
stands right now, let alone adding more.
The road
traffic.
wide, it's turning, there's a lot of fast traffic.
That's why you guys are here. All right. Anyone else want to speak to that one? All right.
I can address that. I've been on a rail trail in New Hampshire, and they have this interesting light setup where the light's dark. You come up to it, you press the button, or possibly it senses that you're there. It immediately goes yellow for 5 seconds and then red. And then after a very short period of time, enough for a bicycle to easily get across and a pedestrian to get out into the middle, it turns into a blinking red. So you have maybe 5-7 seconds where a car is obliged to stop.
But if the bicycles come and gone, they're free to go. And if you set up the lights, you know, it goes like this, as you said, S curve. If you set up the lights so that people can see it coming from both directions, that would be pretty safe.
And that's a high intensity activated crosswalk. So that's something you can look at for if obviously we're hoping to have a lot of people utilizing the trail. So we can implement something like that to make sure that cars have a reason to stop. And then when there's no one else in the crosswalk, they're able to go again without having to wait a whole signal turn.
In Florida on the big trails, it's interesting. There's the crosswalk button, walk forward, back, cross. Like here, we get a couple seconds head start. Down there, it lets all the vehicles go and then it stops. And then it's pedestrians go. So then the drivers are all antsy waiting. So, I mean, sometimes you don't get 3 or 5 seconds head start and get in the middle of the lane and traffic starts going. It's a bit of a lane.
Agreed. All right, so we've heard from cyclists and some people walking, but does anyone have any way that they would personally use the trail if it was connected? Anyone?
Use it more.
Okay.
I'd use it more.
Use it more?
Yeah.
Awesome. Just for anything?
I'm basically trying for just looking for something longer. So to connect these two trails, right?
So transfer from recreation into actual case to other than that. Commuting, public transport, like public access. I see a lot of people getting on highways like the Miracle Mile and riding their bike or walking to where this would be a great opportunity for them to go, oh, I can go here. You know, Grand Central has a bike lane, but they still go on places like the Miracle Mile, to where this gets a lot of people who, you know, less fortunate or, you know, the impact of COVID have turned to biking and walking to get themselves to work or get themselves around the Elmira and Horseheads. It's really would be helpful to everybody else, because, you know, even when I'm driving, I'm coming down Miracle Mile and they're coming at me because they're going the wrong way, or, you know, on the other side of the road, it's like, oh, wow, you're gonna really cause traffic to come across the lane. It's really intense, and I would love to see something like this really help out that person.
Yeah. I think it was kind of mentioned briefly earlier, but the hope is to kind of connect things economically too. So if you wanted to get close to Hanover Square, but you only had a bike, you're able to access more things that way. You can get all the way up to Watkins Glen, you can get down to Lauman. So the hope is connecting those things broadens the opportunities for people to get places.
If the trail was long enough, would there be potential to do like a campground in the middle somewhere or something like that? Or, I mean, there'd probably be wise for local restaurants to set up or at least advertise that they're closed.
Yeah. I don't know around the area if there's room for it, but that'd be pretty great. And definitely, I think the restaurants would benefit. I think someone mentioned earlier too, like property values went up. And, you know, when you have trails and easy connections, it makes people more likely to stop by, you know. So next I'd like to ask about like what times of year you might see yourself using the trail, and then what times of day. So would you be walking or biking in the morning, in the evening? We mentioned lights. So are we going to have, you know, need for lights into like midnight? Are we going to need to make sure that it's plowed and safe when it snows?
There's some spots on the trail further down where the water accumulates in some spots and freezes all over.
Gotcha. All right. Anyone else? Ooh, yeah. All right. And then for trail design, are there any amenities or elements that particularly stand out to you as something that's important to include? I hear bathroom, yes.
Consistency in the trail itself, as far as trail width, trail surface. This is especially true on Catharine Valley Trail. It's you set the link to trail Yeah. And I read through some of the comments about the Catharine Valley Trail. And that was one of the major things. Consistency of the trail just isn't there. Trail surface. And like I said, I ride a trike, which is a little bit lighter than a regular bike. And that's one of the complaints I have. I'm a board member of the Friends of the Catharine Valley Trail. And, so that's something I'd like to see, especially the Catharine Valley Trail. Lackawanna Trail, decent trail.
Thank you.
Trail design elements, mileposts. I'm working on putting them on the Catharine Valley Trail. The waterfront, the marina in Watkins Glen is milepost 0.
Oh.
And we're counting up from there. So it would seem should be sensible to keep counting up as we go through the connector and onto Lackawanna Trail has not numbers, but they say, you know, this is another mile and this is another mile, but they're not actually numbered.
Right.
It'd be kind of nice to continue all the way.
Yeah. Yes.
To add to that, nobody's talked about anything about EMS stations or first aid stations. There should be some designated areas if you need help, you're gonna call the fire department and or ambulance. That's a good idea, is to have the mile markers on there. So somebody could say I'm at mile marker 15 or whatever, and whatever services they need. But I think it would be a good idea to have a designated area, so many feet or so many miles, whatever, where if you need help, you could go to that area. The fire department knows exactly where you are. It's set up with 911 that you could get help.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's just a sign, right? Designated.
A sign or
One of those like
something, whatever
phone booth things.
fire coordinator and yes, the folks would suggest in Chemung County. But it should be cooperative with Schuyler County or Schuyler County and Chemung County.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else on that?
I think too, there's an opportunity for more signage. Like I think on the Catharine Valley Trail, it's a little better and it'll sort of say, you know, I think there used to be, maybe there still is like little like audio tour kind of stops.
Mhm.
Doesn't really have that. And I do think if it was like connecting Watkins to Elmira or to Lauman, I mean, to have it not just like a mile marker, but a sign that's, you know, this many miles to Watkins Glen, or even like, you know, this way, you know, 2 miles to Mark Twain's gravesite. Like, I just think there's opportunities for
Some wayfinding.
Yeah, with the signage.
Thank you.
One thing to improve the Lackawanna Trail from Water Street, basically south, all the way south, is to somehow create a better barrier between the trail and the highway. Like trees, plant trees down through there. That's the only thing I dislike about that trail is the noise from the highway.
So sound barrier and also like
Yeah,
physical
some kind of
separation.
sound barrier, just even trees would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Might have some visibility problems with that too. Because somebody's running along or somebody can fall, gets hurt or something like that.
Sure.
You're
Yes.
designing these trails, does the ADA regs fall into place for people that might be in wheelchairs, crutches?
I would say yes. I would hope that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Recreational trail standards for ADA.
And that's why that surface is important. 'Cause if I'm in an electric wheelchair, I don't want to be on number 3 crutch down.
Exactly. Yeah. We'd like it to be accessible for any.
And these people just get dropped out.
Absolutely.
I don't
Absolutely.
think it's the athlete with a fancy bike, but what about somebody that's handicapped?
Absolutely.
Well, the correct limestone that's on the Catharine Valley Trail is considered an ADA accessible surface when it's maintained. If you're on the Wild Trail, the Pine Valley Trail, Pine Creek Trail, that one
seems to be resurfaced more often. The crushed limestone, so it's much easier to ride even on a narrow tire bike. So maybe as part of this, we can look at working with the state to resurface or even change the surface on the Catharine Valley Trail. Just one thing comment I'd like to make is I was around here in the early 90s when we first started talking about this section. It still isn't built. And I was very early in my career then, but the people leading that conversation, I thought were going to really not get out of the room safely that night. So it's very refreshing to see the support that's here tonight. But what we did walk away from in the early 90s, okay, let's build the easy sections first, and that will build support to do the more difficult sections later to connect them. And I think that's where we're at now, is we're trying to connect the easy parts. And you know, talking about different wayfinding, talking about history science, that's awesome stuff that we want to do. We felt it was more important initially with the Lackawanna Trail to get the trail built, to get users out there, and those users would push for those technical amenities. I think that's what we're seeing here tonight. So I'm different.
All right. And then is there anything else that we haven't really touched on tonight that you think we should consider?
Yep. The name,
The name.
what is it?
Well, that's what you guys are here to help out.
I think we should call it the Chemung Canal Trail, because for the most part of it, it's following.
We can get a sponsor.
No, that was not my
I know.
goal. It was honoring the history of Chemung County, and it is entirely within Chemung County. It connects to the Catharine Valley, but Catharine Valley's, Schuyler and Chemung, but this is entirely a Chemung County trail. So that's my proposal. Other people may.
All in favor?
Naming is difficult. Naming is very, very difficult, but I think in this case, we've got a canal and it has a name and we can just steal it.
Very cool. Thank you. Yes.
If we were able to pull this together, I believe you could camp at Clue Park at the north end. At the Laman end, if you leave the trail, take a right and head down to the river, there's a pavilion area. It's a fishing access. I wonder, and of course there's Newtown Battlefield. However, that's a substantial climb for many people. But there's camping up there. Where I was going is that I wonder if the fishing access area might be repurposed or modified in some way to have restroom and campsite possibilities. Then you would have this very interesting opportunity to have somebody come here, spend the night, ride a flock, spend the night, meal, ride back, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I think to Andy's point too, that's stuff like everyone here who's very supportive of this, we can build this trail and then we can push for these great amenities and these awesome additions. And someone else mentioned camping like along other parts. I would love to see that because I personally cannot ride my bike very far. So I'd need a lot of rest stops. So.
Yeah, so from a point of view of campgrounds, those are the kind of things that you have a couple more hoops to jump through. I'm on the board of health. So those are the kind of things that add on, phase 2, phase 3 kind of elements. Yeah.
But always good to consider. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then we add all the fancy stuff.
I Sir Earl just wasn't some. The Catharine Valley Trail has a guidance committee, Friends of the Catharine Valley Trail. What does the Lackawanna Trail have as far as a guiding committee?
The guiding committee, there was a, I'll look to you some too, Andy, not to put you on, there was a board for the Lackawanna Rail Trail, but as I said, when Jim Airy was in office, was the director, and I'm trying to think back. There's a little friction in there, to be honest with you. I think that might be why they kind of disbanded. But they had like monthly or
so
quarterly meetings.
There was a Friends of the Lackawanna Rail Trail, which It's largely inactive at this point. I think something that we have to look at too, and it's good that there's a board member from the CVT here, is that if you're gonna connect these trails, it's one trail. You know, what, and that comes to your point about the name.
It kind of is, and it kind of isn't. I raised that issue before the Friends of the Catharine Valley Trail, and their feeling is Watkins to Huck Finn Road. That's our trail. And if you want to create another Friends of the Chemung Canal Trail, go for it, Russ.
Yeah, and I think that from a marketing standpoint, though, you want to market 30 miles. You
Yeah.
want to market two
Right.
15-mile sections. If you have a canal trail or canal corridor trail, and then you have the Catharine Valley section, and you have the Chemung Canal section, maybe that's a way to market it, but I think that's something that we should be thinking about in the big pictures. How do we work with Schuyler County and state parks to market the whole corridor? Because that's what's gonna really drive.
State parks.
Well, consider this also, that state and federal funding agencies like to see multiple stakeholders, as, you know, that they don't, the smaller the item, the less likely they're gonna finance improvements to it or fund improvements to it. So the bigger element, you might have a little bit more options on funding.
Great. Any more comments to close this out?
What Andy was saying there, on the state level, you know, they branded the Erie Canal Trail and a whole bunch of county trails down in the Hudson Valley, and then up to the North Lake Champlain and stuff. They took all those, improved them, connected them, and branded the whole system the Empire State Trail, which now is really big recognition. But I just learned recently that some of those trails down in the Hudson Valley, they kind of ruffled their feathers to be sort of run over and branded a whole different thing. But in hindsight, I think it really helped them out. Even though they want to be known as the Dutchess Trail and the Wallkill Trail, calling it the Empire State Trail kind of takes away some of their glory, but it really helped them. But I think, yeah, like Andy said, and I think that Chemung Canal Trail name is an awesome idea.
Just to lighten the mood, we call it the Lackawanna Rail Trail, much like a 5-year-old calls their dog Brownie. It wasn't too creative. It used to be the Delaware Lackawanna Western Railroad. So, all right, we'll call it the Lackawanna Rail Trail, knowing that at some point, people that had better vision, better ideas than us would come up with a way to brand it, in a real spectacular way. So I don't think we're married in Chemung County or City of Elmira, who own those two pieces, current pieces, to the name Lackawanna Rail Trail. So there is an opportunity here to rebrand the whole corridor with support from the local governments, I believe.
Yeah, I think Chemung Canal would be the best because it follows the Chemung Canal from Chemung River to Watkins Glen. That was the canal. And even if you go down to Waverly, that was the Junction Canal that went to Waverly.
Sullivan Trail.
I think somebody else has already called it Sullivan Trail.
We get it by sponsored in Chemung.
Yes, ma'am.
If you went with the name Chemung Canal, I think that would help you maintain a focus on exactly what the identity would be and making decisions with regard to crossovers and so on and so forth, and where they're located. So it may complicate the situation in some areas, but also simplify it. But maintain the identity. I think that would be terrific.
Thank you. All right, if we have no more comments for now, we have some printouts of the trail in the back here. We have a super big one up here. And then I have some sheets up front with information if you'd like.
Walk.
What? Oh, yes. We are also planning a walk for June 24th for a portion of the trail. We're looking to do that at 9 a.m. We're going to meet behind Nick's Pub and Grill in Hanover Square. They got a parking lot back there. We're going to get a bus to shuttle us to around the fairgrounds, and then we'll walk. It's going to be approximately 2 miles. And we'll go through some of the potential areas that are in discussion.
So that's next Saturday.
Next Saturday, 2 Saturdays. Oh, next.
A week from Saturday.
A week from this Saturday. It'll be at 9 AM. That will be meeting.
Do you have an event?
I can make that.
So we'll get an event on the ECTC Facebook
Yes.
group. And
There is a
get it out.
flyer with the information, but I will make a separate event too, so we can see who's interested.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. We do have maps back there if anyone wants to look, and we'll hang out, talk about stuff. Thank you all for coming and giving your input. I think it was all great input. And have a nice night.